Hello there you beautiful people, and welcome to this video where you're going to start learning all about file archiving and compression. Now I'm sure you've heard millions of times about the benefits of keeping backups of your data, and that's exactly what we're going to be covering in the next few videos. In the next few videos you're going to learn how to archive and compress your files in Linux to create backups. Now just creating the backups isn't good enough, you're also going to learn how you can restore data from those backups in the future, so when you need to uncompress it, your data will come back out perfectly. By the end, you're basically going to be able to create and restore your own backups to make sure you don't lose any important data, and you're also going to learn about various compression algorithms so you can save the maximum amount of space on your file system as possible. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Okay, so when you're compressing and archiving files in Linux, the first thing you need to know about is something called a tarball. Now, I want you to imagine that you're at a shopping centre or at your local store and you're buying some apples. Okay, now let me ask you a question. How would you make those apples, after picking them up, easier to carry? Well, you'd put them in a bag, right? And that's what creating a tarball is basically doing. Okay, so creating a tarball is basically a way of putting your files in a bag to make them easier to compress and make them easier to store. Okay, and when you add files to a tarball, you make it possible to store all of your files in one place. Now, the tarball itself doesn't do any compression, but tarballs can be compressed using compression algorithms. Okay, so archiving files is basically a two-step process. First, you make a tarball. Okay, you make a tarball, and then secondly, you compress the tarball using some kind of compression algorithm. Okay, so let's go ahead and create our very first tarball. All right, so we're on our desktop, and we can see that we've got file1.txt, file2.txt, and file3.txt, and we're going to put those inside a tarball. Now, if I do an ls on these files and just have a look at them, you can see that they're all about 10 kilobytes in size. Okay, 9.8 kilobytes are about 10 kilobytes in size, and we're going to put all of these into a tarball. Okay, so to do so, we're going to use the tar command, the tar command. Okay, now the tar command takes quite a few different options, okay, in order for this to work. So first we type tar, then we need to give it three options. Okay, so let's type a dash, and the first option is the C option. Now the C option lets the tar command know that we want to create a new archive. Okay, the next is V, which lets the tar command know that we want it to speak to us. We want it to give us some feedback so we know how it's doing. Now V stands for verbose, and it basically says, hey tar command, don't do this silently, talk to me and let me know what's up. Okay, now the V option is entirely optional. You don't need it to make an archive, but it's good practice to keep it there. Okay, and the final option is the F option. Now the F option is so that it lets the tar command accept files. Okay, so now we need to tell the tar command what we want to call our tarball. Okay, now by convention we end tarball files with the .tar file extension. This is just a convention, so we know what they are called later. So let's call it our archive.tar. Okay, and finally what we need to do now is we need to tell the tar command what's going to go inside our tarball. Okay, so we want file1.txt, file2.txt, and file3.txt. So let's just use a wildcard to save some typing and put file1 to 3.txt. Okay, and with that, we're ready to go. So what we're saying is, hey, tar command, we want you to create a new archive, so we give it the C option. We're saying speak to us so we know what's going on, so that's the V option. And we're going to give it the F option so that it can accept new files and create a new archive. So let's just go ahead and press enter. And we see that it told us what's going on, and now we've got this new tar file that's actually being created, and you can see that it looks like a little box, like a moving box, so you know that it's an archive. And if we do an ls, we can actually see that the tarball file has actually been highlighted in red just to make it stand out that bit more, which is quite nice. So hooray, we've actually managed to create our first tarball. Now that command, this tar command, had quite a few different options in it. So what I've done is for all the commands dealing with archiving, so in this video and the next video, I've made a cheat sheet for you to download that details how to do different archiving tasks. So don't worry about memorizing. Now you can find that in the resources section for the next video when we've finished dealing with archiving, okay? So let's take a look at how large the file is by using ls with the L option. And actually what we're going to do is we're going to look for the ones that have .tar in them using grep. So we just see what has .tar in it to focus our results a little bit. And we see that actually it's about 40,960 bytes. Well, that's strange, because we had 3 about 10,000 byte files, and now we've got 40,960 bytes for the tarball. Shouldn't it be 30,000 bytes or somewhere near there? Well, not exactly, okay? Well, think of the apples example. If each apple weighed 100 grams, and you have 3 apples, and then you put them in a bag, will the whole bag weigh 300 grams? No, because the bag has some weight as well, right? So what we're seeing here is just that in order to create a tarball, we need to add some data. So just think of the extra size being like the extra weight from a bag when you put apples in it. It's just part of the convenience of building a tarball, but don't worry. When we compress the tarball, it will be much, much smaller than the files would have been on their own, okay? Now, we can tell that this is a tarball by looking at the .tar file extension, right? But remember that in Linux, file extensions don't really mean anything. They're usually just a convenience so that we can see it as humans, but they don't mean anything necessarily to the system. So to double check that it is a tarball, we can use the file command that you learned about earlier in the course. So if we do file, let me clear the screen, file archive.tar, and you'll see that it tells us that it is indeed a tar archive. Okay, now if we renamed this tarball, so we renamed it to be our archive .shablam, let's say. Now if we do the file command on that, so file of our archive.shablam, you see that the Linux system wasn't tricked, and it still knows that it's a tar archive even though it didn't have the tar file extension. So let's change that back because we don't need any more confusion than is necessary, but that's just to let you know that the .tar file extension isn't particularly anything special to the system, but it might be to other programs that you have installed upon it, but you can always check what the true nature of something is using the file command. Okay, but the .tar file extension is just something that allows you and potentially other users to know what type of file it is at a glance. Now you can actually take a look at what is in a tarball without having to extract it. So let's say you downloaded this this archive from the interwebs, and you wanted to take a look at what's inside. Okay, well you can do that using the tar command, and what you do is you give it 2 options. Okay, you do the T option and the F option, and then you tell it our archive.tar. Okay, so the T option means test label, and it basically lets you check what's inside the tar file, and the F option, it's just necessary in order to pass a file to the tar command. Okay, so when we do that, it tells us that file 1 and file 2 and file 3 are inside the tarball. So that's pretty cool, right? Now we're going to come on to compression in a little bit, but first let's take a look at how we can get these files outside of our tarball again. Okay, well it's actually very simple. First let's delete the file whatever.txt. Okay, so they've all disappeared, and we've got just our tarball here, and we're going to extract the files out of that. Okay, so let's try and do this now. The way we'll do it is it's actually very simple, right? So you'll have the tar command, and remember to create an archive, you had cvf, and then we wrote our archive.tar, and then we gave it some files, okay? Now to extract, it's very simple, okay? Instead of C for create, you use X for extract. And everything else is the same, but you don't even have to give it any files because you're not putting any files into the archive. It's just that. Tar, X for extract, V for verbose, so it tells us what it's actually doing, and F is necessary so you can pass a file to the tar command. And when we press enter, we'll see that it has indeed extracted out for us file 1, file 2, and file 3 from the archive, and we have those back in the directory that we were in when we ran the command. So there we go, pretty easy, right? And again, all of this is in the cheat sheet for us. So now you might be thinking, okay, we've just extracted these files from the tarball. Is the tarball now empty? Well, actually, it's not. You can actually check that the files are still in there by telling it, just like you saw before, checking inside with the T and F options. You can check that file 1, file 2, and file 3 are still inside the tarball. So no matter how many times you extract from a tarball, the tarball still contains what's inside of it. So it's like an it's a reusable bag that maybe you get from shops. Okay, so that's pretty awesome, right? Now, I'm going to break the video here in interest of time, and in the next video, we're going to be talking about how we can compress our tar balls to make them smaller. So for all that goodness, I'll see you in the next video.